All right, this is when the Creator uses the incinerator part 2. We did part 1 this morning. So I'll just quickly give us a small intro to get us back into it. The first point we saw, this is the story of Elijah going to the widow of Zarephath. And we saw this was a trial for Elijah of the mind. He had to change his way of thinking. His hiding place had to be abandoned. You don't think of that on your own. God's got to give you that thought. He had to move to Baal country, right, to the Zidonians. He had to depend on a widow, a poor widow at that, for his sustenance. He had to wait in silence there with the widow without doing any work of a prophet. These are all things that God was training him to think according to God's thoughts, not man's. Now the widow, she's being tried as well and purified. She's got some things she's got to work on as well. For the widow, it was a trial of heart, the affections, the things she loved. Here we are. A stranger walks up to her and demands the last share of her final meal before she dies. He says, "Make me a little cake first before you go take your last bite before you die." It's not bad enough that she's already reduced to the last morsel she'll see on this side of the earth. But now this stranger walks up and says, "Hey, I need some food and I need to eat first." Now, that'd be tough. It's true that the prophet that showed up was wearing a prophet's mantle. We know that. That's what Elisha wanted when he left. That identified him as a prophet, the mantle. So she could see that, and she could see that he was a prophet, and a prophet of God, that's of Israel. So she could defer those things from just his appearance. But that's still not enough reason to make her give up her last meal. There's many deceivers who claim to be prophets. So she could have justified it in her mind and said, "Hey, there's a lot of deceivers around right now. There's no reason for me to give up my last meal just for you." In 1 Kings 13:8, 1 Kings 13:8, here's a prophet who claimed to be a prophet. 1 Kings 13:8. He said unto him, "I am a prophet also as thou art. And an angel spake unto me by the word of the Lord, saying, Bring him back unto the house." That's 1 Kings 13:8.
And the man of God said unto the king, "If thou wilt give
1 Kings 13:18. 18. And he said unto him, "I am a prophet also as thou art. And an angel spake unto me by the word of the Lord, saying, Bring him back with thee unto thine house, that he may eat bread and drink water. But he lied unto him." So there's precedent already that you don't just necessarily have to trust a prophet, because some of them are liars. So her, in this desperate situation for her last meal, could have used that for an excuse, but she didn't. In 1 Kings 22:12. 1 Kings 22:12. Not only are there prophets who deceive on purpose, there's prophets who are deceived by God. 1 Kings 22:12. And all the prophets prophesied so, saying, Go up to Ramoth Gilead and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver it into the king's hand. Those prophets were prophesying by deceit from God, a lying spirit in their mouth, and God gave it to them. So she could have used any number of reasons to deny his request, but she didn't. The foreign gods that she's used to in this land, she would have thought, if I obey a god from Israel, I'm going to make my gods, Baal, mad. She could have used that for an excuse, and that would have been reasonable, but she didn't. She didn't. I'm just talking about an inferno. We're not starting one.
Careful what you prophesy, Pastor. We're going to have to live in your house.
Now, if that had not been enough, at home, here where the man comes to her gate and asks for her last meal, probably at the same time her child is coming out of the door, emaciated, stretching out his bony little hand saying, "Give me some food, I'm about to starve." And yet this man comes to that she doesn't know from Adam, walks up and says, "No, give me first." Those are all things that make you scratch your head. And she did it. That's some serious faith. Let's think about it. If you had been the woman, this man, this prophet says, "Give me your last meal, and then it will never end. You'll just have food and food and food until there's rain again, until there's prosperity again." Well, if I had been the widow, I would have said, "Wait a minute. If you're such a prophet that you can produce food, why don't you go produce your own?" She didn't use that for an excuse. A lot of things she could have done. She had a lot of faith, a lot more than I do. Was it reasonable that she should part with her last morsel for a stranger's promise without knowing this guy from anywhere? In 1 Samuel 25:11, Nabal takes the reasonable answer, which is wrong, and here's what he says. "Shall I then take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shears and give it unto men whom I know not whence they be?" Well, that'd be the normal answer. I'm not given to a stranger. I've got my own house that needs it. Me first, ours first. And in a lot of cases, that's a good thing. However, here it was a God thing, and she had already been commanded by God, "You're going to take care of this guy." Her faith stood the test. The Bible says in 1 Kings 17 that she went and did according to the saying of Elijah. What he said, she did. She viewed it as God speaking directly to her. Then her son falls sick. Oh man, it's just gone from... Is he just toying with her? You know, he kept her alive so that he could kill the boy in front of her. I mean, this is tough. It's her only son. She doesn't have a whole house full. I mean, that'd be bad enough. But now she's only got one son. And a son is what everyone craved back then, because that kept the line going, kept the family name. She had one son. That's the only thing she could hold on to in this world that was of any good. And yet now he's going to die. In Luke 7, verse 11, God likes to do this thing with an only son. Luke 7:11. "And it came to pass the day after that he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and much people. Now when he came nigh unto the gate of the city," I've got to get this thing big enough where I can read it. They came nigh unto the city of the gate. Behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she a widow." We ever seen this before? "And much people of the city was with her." Here it is again. An only son to a widow, and they're dead. Well, there's only one remedy for that: God. And unless this prophet is a true prophet and can get a hold of God, there's going to be no difference. He's going to stay dead. In Genesis 22, verse 2. God knows where your affection is. And he's going to require you offer whatever it is that you hold dear to him. The affections of the heart have got to be submitted to him, and he will try them. Genesis 22:2. "And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I shall tell thee of." There he is with Abraham, saying, "Okay, I know what you really love. I promised this son to you. You got a son, and now your affection has been poured on him. I need to make sure that you still have more affection for me than him. God always tries whatever we begin to love, even if it's a blessing from him. The second we take the blessing and exalt it above the affection we have for him, he will test that blessing. In 2 Kings 4:20, Elisha does almost the exact same thing. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knee till noon, then died. Here's another only son that has to be raised. There's something in there. God wants us all the way from the beginning of the book to see there's pain in losing an only son, because he's going to send his only son. And he wants us to know that that's where his affection is. God's affection is on his only son. Now, for us, anything that we have is going to pale in comparison to anything God has. And the closest resemblance he could make was a widow woman with an only son. So it repeats over and over and over throughout your Bible, so you recognize it. In Zechariah 12, verse 10. Zechariah 12:10. It says, "And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son." We've only got one person that we can claim is our salvation. That's just, not only is Jesus Christ the only Son of God, he's the only Son we have access to. He's our only one too. He said, here one day I'm going to come back and these people are going to see me for who I really am, and then they're going to mourn just as though I had been their only son, because he is. Not only had the widow and this son had a bond because of being mother and son, but because they had suffered together. They'd been through some life, some situations that had to depend on each other. Now that creates a strong bond. And her son had been brought back from the jaws of death. They were both about to die. Now she got to see her son live, because the meal had multiplied, the oil had multiplied, and day after day they'd been able to live. So it's as though she was expecting him to die, and now he's been brought back, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he gets sick and dies. In 1 Kings 17:12. "And he said, As the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but an handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. Behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die." So in her eyes, she was already as good as dead. Her son was as good as dead. Now, I guess probably the only solace she had in that situation was maybe they would die at the same time. She wouldn't have to see her son die. But now life has changed. They've been able to live. And now she's healthy, and the son's going to die in her presence. We value things. We put a value on something in the same proportion as what we spend on them, what it cost us. If you spend a lot on something, you're going to be a little more careful with it. That's one good reason I say you should spend a lot of money on a Bible. Spend as much money as you think is excessive, because then you'll value it. You'll put some value in it. You'll treat it nice. You'll be careful when you go through it so you're not tearing it up. Put some value in it. Now, she had put all her value in this son. Now, God says, that's great. However, there's something way more important than anything you can touch on this earth. And that's where the value should really be. Now, if I can bring life back into a dead son, you should value God. And she does. Why was the prophet who'd given them bread, I mean, that's a miracle. That's a daily miracle, one after the other. Why was he unable to keep sickness at bay? That'd be a tough question. These are all issues of the heart. That's something that would change her motives. And this guy's living in her house. Did he cause all these problems? I mean, just imagine the emotional turmoil, the thoughts, the intents of the heart that would have to go through. Now, she does something wise here. She doesn't blame any of those things that I've just mentioned, even though we probably would have. You know what she does? She only blames her sin. She says, have you come to recall my sin to remembrance? Wow. That's right. Sin is a problem. Sin's a problem of all man. However, she didn't know enough of the Bible. The son doesn't die for the sins of his mom, and the mom's not going to die for the sins of the son. You find that 3 times in the Bible. A person dies for his own sin, not for someone else's sin. So that wasn't the cause of it at all. But that's the right way to think. The wages of sin is death. There's death. There must be sin. In Isaiah 1, verse 25. No matter how much spiritual growth you've seen, in order to be a vessel for the finer, you have to go to the refiner. You've got to be refined. And as long as you're still on this earth, God ain't done refining. There's still something that needs to be purified. Isaiah 1:25. And I will turn my hand upon thee, and purely purge away thy dross, and to take away all thy tin. See that last word there? That look like any other word you know? Sin. Tin. That's your dross. That's what needs to be burned out. That's a good reason that God puts us through some of life's problems. It's the refiner. He's getting rid of garbage. The tin's got to go. He's burning it out. That's a good thing. This is not a reprimand for rebellion to either the widow or Elijah. It was refining to produce a rare jewel. That's what God was doing. James chapter 1. James chapter 1, verse 12. James 1:12, he said, blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, you've gone to the refiner, he shall receive the crown of life. Isn't that what they wanted for that boy? Life? Yeah, because he'd had death. Which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. The affection. Get the affections right. You know what's connected with the right affections? Life. A crown. Those all come at the price of testing. Proverbs 17, verse 3. Proverbs 17, verse 3. He says, the fining pot is for silver, and the furnace for gold, but the Lord trieth the hearts. The closest we can see it on earth is to go look at a refiner. That pot that they put in the fire, and it melts down everything and burns out the garbage. That's the closest we can get to it. But the true thing is right there at the end of the verse. The Lord trieth the hearts. The closest picture man can get is go down to the jeweler, watch him melt down some gold. And that's what God does with our hearts. The affections that we hold dear, we have to offer to him and never have them above him. Only something of value can be refined. I can't put a bunch of tin into the fire and get out gold. It doesn't work that way. I can't put a bunch of tin in there and claim that it's silver when it comes out. You put it in the fire, it's going to disappear. It turns to ash. Okay? So there was something of value in both the widow and Elijah that God was refining, making better. Now, we've already seen this widow's done things that we never would have done. She's a step ahead of us. So no wonder God's going to refine her further. She's doing good. That doesn't mean God comes down here with a great awards band and, tells everybody to bow down and worship you. No. That means he refines and makes you better and better and better. Only a cross bearer can be a crown wearer. If you're not willing to be tried, your faith is not worth anything. What good is faith if it can't be tested? It's fantasy, not faith. 1 Kings 17:24. 1 Kings 17:24. This was the conclusion of this story. And the woman said to Elijah, "Now by this I know that thou art a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in thy mouth is true." That's what true testing from God produces. You run to the Word of God and you find out it's true. That's truth. So if you're going through testing, make sure you're in the Word of God. Otherwise, you're not going to know the conclusion to the story. It's got to keep going. The purpose for it is for you to know the Word of the Lord is true. In Proverbs 28:14. Proverbs 28:14. Had this woman become rebellious at this point, the sun would not have revived, and who knows what calamities would have followed. Proverbs 28:14 says, "Happy is the man that feareth always, but he that hardeneth his heart shall fall into mischief." Now, you see our verse there. See the first part of it. Happy is the man that feareth always. Does that sound odd to anybody? Happiness and fear is the same. Happy is the man that fears always. You got to fear the right thing. Don't fear something unreasonable. Fear something reasonable. It's reasonable to fear the Almighty God. And it's unreasonable to fear anything that he has already promised to squash. Okay? Because that's not a problem. Not for him. However, probably day after day, seeing that meal increase, the oil continue to grow, apathy sets in. You expect to see that. If every Friday I walk up to you and say, "Here's $500. The first couple of Fridays, you'd say, "Man, that's amazing. You're the greatest. Yeah, thank you, thank you." And then after a year of doing that, if I skipped a Friday, you'd start thinking, "Hey, where's my $500? Apathy. You start getting used to it. She probably has gotten used to, accustomed to that meal growing and the oil continuing. He says, you're happy if you fear always. Remember the fear of God, even in the blessings of God. He said, "But he that hardeneth his heart shall fall into mischief." Don't take him for granted. Now let's put a little conclusion on this and we'll be done. This is a short little thing tonight. The widow of Zarephath had no way of knowing the great destiny that lies in the hand of that gaunt figure that came to her gate with that worn travel and haggard look. No doubt Elijah himself was racked with hunger and thirst. He didn't walk up there as a king. He probably appeared just like every other man in town, wore out, looking for anything to eat, anything to drink. If you look back to the days around World War II or before, when Hitler was doing the Jews so bad, they were scrounging through the trash heaps trying to find any morsel they could. That's probably how this whole town looked. Elijah didn't come in there, as the picture of health. He probably looked just like everybody else did. And who would have thought that that man would have been the sustainer of life for herself and her son? Had she turned away from him, she would have turned away from her own salvation. I don't mean spiritual salvation, but physical. She accommodated his requests, and for that, she got salvation physically. Now, this might be, I don't know for sure, but this might be the basis for the verse we find that says, talks about a prophet's reward. If you give even a cup in the name of a prophet, you receive a prophet's reward. That's exactly what she did. She gave a cup of water. And she got a prophet's reward. Her son came back to life. Our prophet is not some man with a mantle. Our prophet is Jesus Christ. And he has many great, exceeding, and precious promises that he's already promised to us. The question is, will you receive them? It's not enough that Elijah actually had all the answers if she wouldn't receive the answer. Jesus Christ has all the answers. They're right here. You've got them. You've read them. If you haven't, that's your fault. You should have read them, and they're there. You can. Do you receive them? It's one thing to read it. It's another thing to receive it, to apply it, to appropriate it. Job chapter 23. Job 23 verse 10. No need to get mad at the refiner. He's doing a good work, and it'll be good for you. And you'll see it when you are able to look back at it one day. You're not going to be able to look back at it while you're going through it, but here's the proper response. Job 23:10. But he knoweth the way that I take. When he hath tried me, put you in the fire, I shall come forth as gold. That's what he's doing. He's making better. 1 Corinthians 3. 1 Corinthians 3. First Corinthians 3, verse 13. It says, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by what? Fire. There's that incinerator. And the fire shall try every man's work, of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. Good. You know, there's a way you can get out of the testing and the trying and the fire down here. Man will give you an escape. Man will give you a way out. If you're smart enough, you can think one up. But if you'll patiently endure it, you'll receive a reward for it in eternity. Now, there's one more fire that if you won't accept, you will become. The lake of fire. Death and hell will be cast into the lake of fire, and he says this is the second death. That's the final incinerator. Go through this one now, the right way, and let it make you better. Otherwise, you'll become the dross that he throws into the final fire at the end. All right, that's our story, and that was a quickie.